Welcome to The Other 51, a podcast about writing with me, Brian Moritz. This week, my conversation with Marnie Eisenstadt, a reporter for Syracuse.com and the Post-Standard. So, central western New York, it's weather, obligatory snow talk. How's your weather doing today?
Well, you know what? Today is lovely where I am. The sun is shining. The paths are clear. So, and everyone was able to go to school today. So I think that's a good day. And I always just budget that it will snow from now until about May, and I really don't pay much attention to it.
No, that's really the only way you can survive this part of the country this time of year. You guys got more than we did. I'm out in Rochester, and we got like 4 or 5 inches, which I mean that's nothing.
Okay. No, at my house we got about a foot, maybe a little bit more. So. Yeah, and everybody, a lot of places canceled school the night before, but we didn't cancel school until maybe 5:15 in the morning.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, they always do it at 5:15 in the morning. So.
Right. Well, you guys had an eventful weekend up in Syracuse, along with the big winter storm coming through. I know that there was a lot of action and a shooting at the mall at Destiny USA,
right?
And stuff like that. So I guess just kind of from your perspective and from your job, what's a weekend like this like? I know we kind of talked yesterday when we were setting this up, trying to find people who were at the mall during the shooting where one person was shot. So what's a weekend like this with this kind of news like for you as a reporter?
So I'm I don't generally like work that shift unless somebody maybe asked me to help out. And honestly, I think someone did ask me to help out, but I didn't read my email until they had found someone else. So generally I check my email by like 7 o'clock, even on a Saturday morning, but I think I overslept. With something like this, it's obviously it's the biggest day of the year at the mall. And it's one of the biggest malls in the region. It's really, it is a destination place for people. And there were something like 10,000 people there, at that moment. So a lot of them have stories to tell. I mean, people thought, no matter the reality of it, people thought that they were going to die. I've talked to several people now for a story, just telling the stories of the back rooms that people got stuffed into and the kind clerks who were making minimum wage or just a bit more who were suddenly in charge of people's safety. So there's the one small thing that happened that just sent all of these ripples into, really a group of people that is larger than, an average village around here. I mean, that's really, if you think about it, that's how many people are at the mall at that point. So, and that's something we hear also, we have to cover both from the quick turn, but then also, to come back and give people some context. There's a story I'm working on, and then another reporter is working on a story about, what is the protocol when something like that happens? Did they follow it? It's not the kind of thing that you roll up, write one story about it, and go away. We like to give people context, because it's a place of real significance in our community. We like to make fun of it, but, everybody goes there, including me.
And so if you don't know, if you're not from the central or western New York region, there was an altercation at the mall in Syracuse that led to a shooting. One person was shot. But the mall was on lockdown for several hours and ended up closing early at like 8 o'clock on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I'm wondering, how did you end up finding people to talk to? Like, what's your mechanism for actually finding out and people who are willing to talk and who were there and might be willing to share a story?
I think just like with any story, you go to a couple of different places. Social media, tons of people commented on our story, on posts that other people made, and they were already starting to tell their stories. And I think more and more now in the news world, people are already telling their own stories. So it's up to us to really pay attention to that and, help them tell it on our platforms as well and put it into some context. So, I found people, through that way. And then I put out a call on my personal Facebook page, and then my work Facebook page, which is public, and just said, do you know anyone? Pass me along. I want to hear about what happened. And, and then also just people I know people, I live in this community, and, people I knew were there, people knew people who were there. It's all that sort of spider web that we cast out as reporters and people who live in a community. And I'm still looking for people to talk to, because you never have enough.
Mm-hmm. So, when do you know you have enough? There's a question for you. How do you know you have enough for a story like this?
I think for a story like this, it's really weighing what you want to do against the deadline that you're given. And I think at least in the web and newspaper business, deadlines always play some factor in there, right? It's how much can I get by a certain point? If somebody wants something by Thursday, how much can I get by Thursday? Or sometimes it's just you have tapped every keg, you can't find any more. And I think once I've been doing this probably for 20 years, and I think you kind of know when you've hit that point. But also, somebody always asks you, like someone just did, can't you get more? And then you think, oh wait, I didn't try here and I didn't try there. I'll just try for a little more. And sometimes a little more is surprising. It's the person that that really makes your story so much better, and you don't realize you even needed it. Like this series, I think you're going to ask me about later, but we were mostly done, and then one more person wanted to talk, and he just opened a whole new door.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of finding people in the stories, one of the stories that I wanted to ask you about was the janitor from Syracuse University, who you wrote about, who cleaned a lot of the racist graffiti, or cleaned racist graffiti off the walls, and part of the ongoing situation there. How did you find out about that story?
So, I think my title now is technically a public affairs reporter, but I often write stories just about people doing doing good, doing things that someone else may not see them rising to the level of news, but there's a context that they provide to our community that I find really interesting, and our readers do as well. And so this woman, Carrie, she I met her maybe last year. She runs just a little Facebook just a Facebook page basically where she brings people who have stuff together with people who need stuff. It's literally as simple as that. And I did a story about her for Christmas last year, just about how this little effort of hers was helping lots of people help each other. And so I'm friends with her now on social media, and I think I just saw she made a little post about she'd put up these cards at SU, and I just immediately was like, that is a story. That is something, like, she's in the thick of this, and she has found a way to say and do something good that resonates with people. It resonated with me, and I'm pretty average, I think. And so I just messaged her and I said, I want to do a story about this, like right now. and it was 10 o'clock at night. And so I think we did it at 8 o'clock in the morning or something. And she's just a lovely, lovely, earnest person who works the night shift. And so we met me and a photographer the next morning. I don't think it was 8 o'clock, but it was, still morning.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like social media plays a really big role in kind of how you find these stories and how you keep connected with the community.
I think more and more, that's just how that's how all of us communicate with each other, right? I mean, that's how my kids communicate with their friends, and that is how we pay attention to each other now. And so, yeah, not every story certainly comes from social media, but that is just a really easy way to stay in touch with people and to keep track of things. But other stories you find just like literally going for a walk at lunchtime. Like some couple of years ago, someone had hung up just these weird little pieces of artwork, and it turned out to be this guy who put up graffiti art all over the city, and that it was an interesting story. A lot of it comes from keeping your eyes open.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think these stories resonate not only with you, and when you're on the lookout for them, but with readers and with the community? And why are they still kind of so important, kind of in this media environment that we're in?
I think that it is. It's really easy to think that we have people's attention, and it's really easy to think that we, that everyone is always like moving at a fast pace and only wants to read a little bit about a traffic accident, or we have metrics on everything now. But we want to hear stories about real people doing. It sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but real people doing things that matter. There are voices that are so easy to overlook, and they are so important. One of my favorite stories that I did last year was about this 13-year-old girl who, she's just a kid at a middle school in Syracuse, and I talked to her about what it's like to live just every day amid the violence. I mean, we had been writing about this, just spate of gun violence on the near west and south side for weeks, and I just wanted to hear from a kid what it was like to live in that, because every kid in those neighborhoods lives in that. And it was really, so many people told me how it just opened their eyes to a part of their community they didn't see. And I think that's probably a lot of what I write about, people who work with the homeless, who are reaching out to the homeless, and people who are homeless themselves, kids, voices that are easy to overlook or to only listen to just a little bit. I think they're so important, and our readers do as well. I mean, you have to know how to tell and craft a story to get people to come in and listen. But once you do that, people are certainly ready to hear stories about these people who are often overlooked.
Yeah, I love the thing you said about keeping your eyes open, and I tell my students at Oswego that all the time. It's use all of your senses when you reporting is what I tell them. Don't just rely on what people say or what you hear or what you read in something. When you're at an event, look around, write what it smells like, write what the food tastes like, write what you're hearing, and all of that. And it's so important, especially for any story, but especially these types of stories that you do. It's this idea of really trying to bring the reader into this world or into this story a little bit more than they aren't usually.
Yeah, I spoke to a class, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, and we were in this little room around a table, and I we were talking about that very same thing, and I said, when I can't remember the story I was talking to them about. They had asked me about a certain story, and I said, oh, I know what it was. I was writing a story a couple of years ago. I wrote a story about this recovering heroin addict who, he really had like just completely destroyed what was, looked like a storybook life, and then he rebuilt it. But the thing that I just could not understand, that I couldn't get my head around, was what about heroin could be so great that you would just throw all of this away? So I had him walk me through what it felt like to get high. And it was I record myself always when I do interviews. I record the interviews and I listen back, and it's just like, it's the questions are almost painful, but that you have to go to that level of detail sometimes to understand something. So I said, what does it feel like? I said, I've never done heroin. So what does it feel like? Is it like a lot of really good drinks? Is it like sex? Is it like, I said, just what is it like? And he walked me through it. Like at first it feels like, I can't, it feels like you're all warm, and then it is, for like 5 minutes, it's like, I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, but you're like, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's like the best orgasm you ever had. And then it's like, you crash. And I was like, okay, I'm a grown up. I kind of understand that. But, and I said, but what I said to them was, like exactly what you're saying. You ask someone, what does it smell like? When you were there, what did it smell like? What did it look like? What did you feel when you were there? And these people who are stuffed in these back rooms, that's what I'm asking them. Like, what was everyone doing in there? What did it look like? How many people were there? How close were they to you? Because what we really are is we're reconstructing things for people all of the time.
Mm-hmm. So I did want you mentioned the series, and I do want to spend some time talking about it. This came out, was it earlier this year? This came out the AA series.
Yeah, it was just it was in October.
Okay, it was in October.
Throughout the month of October.
Yeah, and the headline on it, which is a great headline to draw you in: "Drunk with Power, Syracuse's Rogue AA Group." And I'm going to have the link to the whole series and all of the videos and stories in show notes for this episode, because it spend some time with it when you have the time, because it's a wonderful piece of reporting and writing, and everything about this is great. But I wanted to
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted to let you talk a little bit about it. First of all, where did the genesis of the story come from? Like, where did this whole year-long investigation that you and Patrick did, where did it start?
So Patrick and I came at it from completely different places. Each of us had found a piece of this story, and there's a young man who was in the story. I think he's the lead in the second day, Benjamin Kress, and he was a medical student who overdosed, and so I ended up interviewing his family. Kind of just about that, trying to find out what happened. Sometimes you just see an obituary and you say, oh, this, I need to find out more. And his family mentioned the name of this AA group to me. And so I, mentioned it to our health reporter, Jim Mulder, and he said, you know what? I think Patrick is also looking into that group. You should go talk to him. And that is what I did. And the two of us were like, let's see what more we can find out. And he's a tremendous reporter and just a very curious person. And so between the two of us, we just dug into really every corner of this thing that people were aware of in this community for 30 years, but really uncertain what they should do about it.
So tell us a little bit about what this group is. Like, what is a rogue AA group?
Sure. So the Syracuse group is an Alcoholics Anonymous group that has been in Syracuse for about 30 years. And Alcoholics Anonymous is, people I think often think you have to get a license or a charter or something to call yourself Alcoholics Anonymous, but you really don't. So, you and I, it just takes two people with a sincere desire to stop drinking. So you and I could start a group right now. And we could call ourselves Alcoholics Anonymous, and we can get on a schedule. And that is what this group did 30 years ago. And, once you're on the schedule, that's how people who are looking for a meeting find you. But there are, there are not rules, but traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. There are things you're supposed to do, things you're not supposed to do. And this group was doing many things that they are both not supposed to do under Alcoholics Anonymous guidelines, and also things that really were on the edge of being legal. So they would tell people they could not take really important medication. It's not right for anyone who's not a doctor to tell someone to stop taking medication, but they were telling people not to take people who were, schizophrenic and bipolar, not to take their medication that they needed to stay stable and healthy. They told people not to take seizure medication. They would keep people, we were told, and detox them really against their will. So they would, you would come into a meeting, you maybe had been, drinking for months or years, and they would keep you there and try and get you to dry out. So these are all practices. These are things that Alcoholics Anonymous does not do, should not do, by its own, traditions and account. But that has been the standard practice of this group and splinters of it.
And so what's the reporting on this like? Because you're entering a world, obviously Anonymous is in the name of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's also a very kind of, I would imagine, very kind of tight-knit, secretive world. And so how did you approach trying to report this and trying to get things on the record and really really get at the story in a way that you would be able to publish it?
So, as you might imagine, it was, incredibly difficult. But the people who were touched by this group were hurt by this group. And they, did not want other people to experience the same thing that they did when they went to a place seeking help. And so that was a motivator. Whenever you're trying to get someone to go on the record with something that is, to put themselves at some sort of, risk by going out there, there has to be a good reason for them to do it. And I think for all of these people, that was the motivator, because there were people who were affiliated with this group who, we can't say there's a direct line from A to B that they overdosed or died because of, directly because of the hand of this group, but the influence certainly of this group certainly influenced their decision. And I think their family members would say that their lives might have been different had they not been involved with this group. So, it's a life and death thing. So that I think was the motivator for a lot of people to talk to us, excuse me. And I, also, everything you get from someone, you have to have somebody else who's going to, verify that for you. And that was really the process with all of these people. So anyone in there who isn't named, and a lot of our sources are not named, like we know exactly who they are, and we have checked their information with another source, often two other sources. And then we had, it was amazing. After the story ran, the stories were so solid when they ran, but after they ran, we heard from more than 100 people who had the same stories to tell. More than 100 people. I mean, I have a spreadsheet. Patrick and I have a spreadsheet with 150, maybe 200 names on it at this point. And you could just change the names. The stories are so similar, and for all of these people, so painful. And so that was just, to me, I mean, I've been in this business a long time. That's never happened to me.
Right. I was going to say, as awful as that is, there's got to be a little bit of pride and validation that the story comes out and it's so solid that people are still reaching out to you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of these people, save maybe a dozen who are part of this group and still, it felt like it did them some good. All of these people, they were saying to us, part of their message was, thank you for doing this. I thought I was alone, or thank you, you're going to prevent someone else from, falling down this same rabbit hole. You put voice to things that I have wanted to say for such a long time, but couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's so gratifying. It just, that's why we do this.
Looking at your Twitter feed, your pinned tweet is this great picture of a file folder with just papers and notebooks, and it looks like Post-it notes and everything, and all of the notes on it. It's a great, kind of visual representation of what reporting looks like. But I'm wondering so as you're reporting it, and you and Patrick are reporting it, do you kind of know that this is going to be 4 parts? Do you know it's going to be multiple parts? Like, how are you kind of figuring out how to actually write all this reporting and break it all up? First I'd like to say that's my folder. It looks like that. Patrick is a good bit younger than I am, and I don't think he has much paper at all. So, that was always a little bit of a joke on me. I always have a lot of paper.
But so originally we weren't sure. I think it's an iterative process, that comes through talking with Patrick and talking with John Lammers, who's he's the senior director of content now. I think that's his official title these days. But he's the editor who's, really in charge of a lot of projects like this. And so he was very much also involved in that brainstorming process, figuring out, what were the threads of this story that were, complete, and we could tell them in a way that would, because it really is a complex story with so many layers, and there's so much history. There's a lot that got left out. Just rich details, interesting twists. That we're not writing a book yet. So it's you have to decide. The decision of what to leave out is almost as important as the decision of what to put in.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talked it through, the four parts were just those were the most salient points that we wanted to make, and we also wanted to make sure that we told a great tale. That we made a narrative that would draw people into this complex situation, make them care about it, but then also lead the public officials and the other people in our community to a place where they could do something to affect change. And I got to tell you, it was not even hours after the final story published that the district attorney announced that he was going to investigate.
Really?
And that was, at the urging of the mayor and the county executive. So we did, I think, journalists are some of the most self-critical people there are in the world, probably. And I am, definitely fall into that category. But when I step back, I just think we did the thing we wanted to do.
What was the biggest challenge in this whole story?
There's not a public record at all in this story. I mean, when you look at so many deep investigations, they're built on records, and we didn't have that here. There was nothing to foil. These are people who not only are they, most of them are struggling with both mental illness and serious addiction. So these are, they're people who have their own complex problems. And, we are asking them to take risks in helping us tell that story. So that's hard. And it's a hard ask to make to someone else. I mean, you can't look at sources as if they're just like pegs to put in your board. They're real people, and you have to consider what you're asking them and how that will impact their life too. So I think that was also hard. But I have to say the thing that was really that was, I guess, when I step back and really think about it, just the bravery of all of these people who decided to speak out. They went on video, they, stepped well outside of their comfort zone. And for some of them, they were criticized for breaking AA's tradition of not, talking in public about a controversial issue. And they did that because it was important and because it mattered. And just so their bravery was, I think, far more remarkable than what we did.
So I ask everybody who I have as a guest this question, so I'll ask you, what's the best thing you've read lately?
The best thing, well, I just read Steve Jobs' daughter's memoir for my book club, and it was the Small Fry. The writing is tremendous. She's just, she's a fantastic writer. That was great. I would recommend it. People in my book club were like, it was kind of long. We could have done without 200 pages, but most of us are writers, and we're always editing when we're reading. So, I thought that was a great read. I would recommend it. And I would say one of my favorite writers to read is a children's author. It's Kate DiCamillo, and I tell other, I was talking to somebody else, a high school student who wanted to be a writer, and I said, you know what? Go back and read her books. It's such clear writing, vivid imagery knows how to tell a story. She's a, I read all sorts of other stuff too, but she's a tremendous writer. That's kind of an unusual thing.
No, it's very. My daughter's 9 now, but looking back at some of the books that we've read, and like Mo Willems is such and these writers.
Oh, my favorite.
Right? they are
totally one of my favorites.
You don't think they're great writing, like when you think about it, but you're right. The simplicity of story and language and the clarity with writing it. If you're a Mo Willems fan, are you familiar with Diva and Flea?
No.
Okay, so this is a Mo Willems book. It's beyond like the Pigeon series or Knuffle Bunny or Elephant and Piggy. It's like a first chapter book, and it follows a cat and a dog throughout Paris, and it's a Mo Willems story, and it is it's probably my favorite book that I read with my daughter. That's not Harry Potter. Definitely. I don't know how.
Check it out.
Yeah, I don't know how old your kids are, but it's a good wide ranging age, because if they're younger, you can read it to them. If they're older, they can read it themselves. But it's a little more big kid than your typical Mo Willems book, but still fantastic.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. I'm a huge fan of his, and my daughter is also 9, and my older daughter's 12. So.
All right, this has been great, Marnie. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this week.
All right, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.